all for joining us today. We know that it is important for you to have access to your elected officials. I'm Heidi McCutcheon. I'm with the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. It's our pleasure to hold this morning's event jointly with Pam Bowles of the North Mason Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Council of Mason County, represented today by Board President Joe Schmidt, who also serves as a newly elected Deputy Mayor of the city, as well as City of Shelton, Jeff Knight. Together, we proudly present this opportunity to convene with our state legislators before the start of this year's legislative session. This morning, we'll hear from Senator Sheldon, Representative Griffey, and Representative MacEwen, who will give us a little bit of an update on what they think may happen during the upcoming 60-day session. Before we get too far into it, I would be remiss not to acknowledge all of our bosses in the room. So if you're a board member of a chamber, of an EDC, or a part of the city council, would you please rise? Applause is loud. And just so that everybody's in the know, per state guidelines, public speakers are allowed to remove their masks. So if you notice that as we're up here at the podium or our legislators are speaking, they will have the ability to remove their masks if they so wish. So with that, Pam Bowles.
Thank you, Heidi. Very skilled lady. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Pam Bowles from the North Mason Chamber up in Belfair, and I see a lot of familiar faces, but also some folks from North Mason, so we're really happy to have them here as well. So this morning, we're going to do some introductions. Some of these are pretty familiar, I've done a few times. So Representative Drew MacEwen is on the House Republican leadership team, currently serving as the assistant floor leader. He is also the ranking member of the Commerce and Gaming Committee and the assistant ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee. I'll go to this one because I'm getting some stuff. There we go. Additionally, he serves on the Joint Committee on Veterans and Military Affairs and the Joint Task Force of Economic Resilience of Maritime and Manufacturing in Washington. Drew served in the United States Navy for 6 years. He is a graduate of the Nuclear Propulsion Program and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Excelsior College. He is the founder and president of the investment firm Falcon Financial Incorporated and is the managing partner of Mountain Lakes Capital, having also invested in other Mason and Kitsap County businesses. Drew is active in many community organizations, including the Rotary, Love Inc., and has been a past president of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. Representative Dan Griffey began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter at the age of 16 and was the youngest EMT in Washington State at that time. He continues now professionally as a lieutenant firefighter with the Central Mason Fire and EMS. Dan has been a volunteer with multiple organizations, including the United Way and Habitat for Humanity. He has participated in Turning Point's Survivor Advocacy Center's Adopt-A-Room program and serves meals at St. David's in Shelton. Representative Griffey serves in leadership as a Republican whip and has passed legislation to protect survivors of sexual assault, fight crime, support our logging and shellfish industries, and to ensure government responsiveness and transparency. And we have Senator Tim Sheldon. He is a 35th District native and is the longest serving member of the legislature. Right? He served 7 years in the House of Representatives, including 2 years as Deputy Majority Leader, before being elected to the Senate in 1997. He has served as President Pro Tem of the Washington Senate and has served many Senate committees while authoring major legislation, including the on-the-job training, infrastructure, job creation, and community notification on sex offenders. He also served several terms as the Mason County Commissioner. Outside his political career, Tim served nearly a decade as the Executive Director of the Economic Development Council of Mason County, followed by economic development work with the Northwest Indian tribes, and has run his family's logging, gravel, and oyster business since 1972. Senator Sheldon. So gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning, and we will give you each a few minutes to hit on the highlights of the last year's session and what you believe may come back this year for discussion at the session and what your hopes are. So today we'll start with Senator Sheldon.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, and first of all, I have to say it's a typical Mason County day, right? Like 3-4 inches of rain last night, snow on top of the snow, so it's been really different, but still feels the same. And this is really a pleasure to me to come today and speak to a group. It's been so long since the three of us have been together, seems like, and to be with the community. And this building brings back lots of memories. I kicked off my campaign for the House of Representatives here in 1990. So I had been the Executive Director for the EDC at that time since '86, so 4 years in. And I did that, I think, for 18 years as well. So lots of great memories, and our community is just one of the best. There's no doubt about it. But I tell people too, you can get off subject when you get the microphone. You're not talking with us. Anyway, we are the most rural district in the state of Washington. Now you would tell that to people and they go, oh no, that's over in Okanagan County, that's in Prairie County. But we only have the city of Shelton incorporated. We have a little bit of Bremerton, just on the outskirts of Tumwater, and that's it for incorporated areas. So most of us are on a septic tank and drain field and a well out in the countryside. So we are the most rural district in the state. So a little bit about last session. There aren't a lot of highlights, I think, from our standpoint. They're mostly some lowlights, but as you can see, I think the biggest one that I think is going to be changed this year is this bill that the legislature passed concerning long-term care. Actuarially, the bill doesn't work. I think the majority party has finally discovered that and admitted it. They knew it. A lot of people knew it before it was passed. But it was a partisan bill, and I was the only, I think I'm the only Democrat that voted against it. But the issue is we can't afford it. And there's an initiative that didn't make the ballot, but we're going to review it, and I think that the bill will certainly be on pause, at least for 2 years. A couple other things that will be reviewed this year. Of course, this is a short session, 60 days, and not the longer session, but the law enforcement accountability bill will be reviewed. Lots of mistakes were made in that. We all support our local sheriff, our local police chief, and all those in law enforcement and public service, and there's got to be some changes to that. So, but I will say we did pass some good things. I think the broadband bill that expands broadband into the rural areas, we need that in our community. That's what helps us grow our local businesses. That's a big plus, and the federal money that's come in will help us get broadband out, but it takes a while. And I would say that the wildfire bill, being able to fight more fires from the air is really a good thing. But I'll close with this. And I guess I'm the old guy here, so I remember going to the Forest Festival when I was a little kid. I was born in Shelton. And it was all about keep Washington green, keep Mason County green. There was Smokey Bear, and it was all about educating the community about forest fires, because they were so devastated in our timber-dependent economy. And today, if you said to some kid, it said, stir your campfire, I think they would think that's some kind of a cocktail drink or something. So we spend so much money fighting fires, but we don't spend as much money as we should educating our community and our visitors about the danger of forest fire, because most of that certainly is caused by us and not by lightning and something else that we can't control. So great to be with you today, and I'm sure going to pass the mic along here and keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming this morning. We do everything early in the legislature, so it's really good, Heidi, and then we do this in the morning. It gets us all prepped for what we're going to have to do. Last year was tough. Right? I mean, my speech on the floor about the police reform bills, I said that there were going to be rivers of tears cried because of the bills we passed this day. We didn't help sexual assault survivors with that bill. We didn't help murder people that were murdered, the families. We didn't help law enforcement be proactive in policing. We didn't do any of those things. It was a terrible bill. We fought the entire session and it was several bills, but we fought the entire session to say, no, the unintended consequences of those bills are going to be terrible for everyone. Now the majority party has asked us, because I serve on the Public Safety Committee, my ranking member and the rest of the Public Safety Committee, how do we fix this bill? We can't deal with the backlash anymore. And I'll tell you what, between that and the long-term health tax, we know that the majority party will listen to people, because they have backed down on both of those policies and are actually asking for help. So this is good news. But last year was, because of the remote capability or remote nature of what we did, I think it was easier just to pass the bills that you wanted to pass in the majority, instead of the bills that had the due diligence or the input from those people that come bug us in the halls. A lot of people think that lobbying and lobbyists are a bad thing because we hear about Congress, but they're a great thing, because they would take you and pull on your, Tim would probably tell you, they pull on your shirt and say, hey, Representative, did you know this part of this bill didn't work? Well, that really helps the process. And having us sequestered in our house was terrible for democracy. It was terrible for the people's voices. They spent money wildly. They enacted policies that we told them were not going to work. When we talk about insurance and the long-term care tax, they actually collapsed an entire industry. Because of the way they implemented it and had the government policy that, if you will, come before the private policies, it actually collapsed that industry, and now our choices are government and maybe one or two policies out there, and it was a wrong direction to take for Washington State. So last year I wanted to be in the rearview mirror. I don't want to make those mistakes any longer. I want to make sure that we're very diligent and deliberative in how we progress. We will have one of the first bills we pass after all the negotiations is going to be a significant reform bill to put the genie back in the bottle when it comes to the law enforcement and reforms. I think we got most of what we want, except for police pursuits. I believe there's times where dastardly people have to be chased down and put in prison. I believe, especially if law enforcement sees the crime that was committed. I think that's proactive, because those dastardly people could then injure someone else. And our job as policymakers is to make sure that we minimize that injury. So we're going to see most of our time working on most of my time, most of all of their time, kind of rolling back those bills. The House Republicans, I got some exciting news. I know I'm running long, but this is exciting. House Republicans will be releasing 3 top priority bills or agendas. We have a transportation package that fully funds the restoration process of all of our structurally efficient bridges and roadways without raising taxes. We also have how we would spend, write a budget if we were in the majority, and I think most people will like it. We have an environmental policy that actually reduces carbon, doesn't raise your taxes, which is unlike the majority party. So keep staying tuned. We will stay, my office will continue to send me emails and those sort of things. My phone is always on. Give me a call. You see things we got to work on, but I thank you all for your time. Sorry for going over tight.
Good morning, thanks for having us. It's always a pleasure to be with this group, and I look forward more to hearing the priorities of the folks here as opposed to what happened. There was one really good thing that happened last year. I'll save that for last year, but what these 2 gentlemen said, I can't say more than that. I mean, it was not a good session, and Dan alluded to it. The way we did session was not good for our form of government. When we have public hearings, yeah, people sign in, they give their testimony. Granted, it's only a minute, sometimes it's 3 minutes, depending on the complexity of a bill. But what's more important is when you're sitting there in the dais and you look out at a group like this and all into a hearing room, and you can read people's faces and you can tell what they're thinking. And then the committee adjourns and you go out in the hall and you get grabbed. And all these people that didn't testify are telling you their thoughts. And that was totally lost. And I firmly believe the majority party took advantage of that. They raised your taxes a couple of times. They made the streets worse. We've done nothing to solve the housing crisis. And it was just this ramrod that went through. And then we would adjourn these virtual sessions, and everybody would go to their favorite box store and go shopping with 500 of their closest people, but we couldn't figure out how to put 98 people in the biggest building in Olympia. It was not good. It was not good, and I think we could have done it better, and that's not to dismiss by any means the severity of this pandemic. But we've shown and we've figured out how to work around it. But the House specifically, the Senate operates under its own rules, but the House specifically chose to put its head in the sand and do things in a manner that they could do legislation that I don't think would have gotten nearly as far as a lot of it did, frankly. So we got a lot of work to do. I know that's the next segment here on what's going up in the next session, but one item I do want to touch on that Tim and Dan did not was the budget. I was elected in the same cycle as Governor Inslee, and at that time the state biennial budget was $31 billion. Under his proposed budget last year that passed, we're now over $56 billion. And the supplemental budget that he just released pushes our spending to nearly $65 billion. Have things gotten better? And economic report this morning, we missed the job mark by half of what the expectation was. 199,000 new jobs were created in this country, and they were expected north of 400,000. Most of you in this room are in business. You can't get somebody to work, can you? We've got inflationary pressures. This state, the way we derive the bulk of our revenue is largely based on consumption. And we've got mass inflation heading our way. What is that going to do to the state budget? We cannot continue to spend every last dime as the governor has proposed in every budget cycle. So, thank you, Pat. With that, I said I know we're going to jump in. I'd rather hear what's coming up and what our priorities are. So we'll jump to that segment. But I do want to end on one good note. The best thing that happened in the last session was we adjourned.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, I would like to invite up the EDC Board President, Joe Schmidt. He will be presenting the 2022 legislative priorities on behalf of the business community.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
There's a lot of things, and there's something expensive on the podium that I don't want to knock off. Yeah, there we go. All right, good morning. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm a Shelton City Council member and also the current board chair for the Economic Development Council in Mason County. Representatives MacEwen and Griffey and Senator Sheldon, thank you for coming out this morning and hearing from us and being part of our planning and long-term success here in Shelton and Mason County. The pandemic has definitely provoked an unprecedented economic recession that absolutely has overwhelmed our community, businesses, our families, with employment declines, greater, in some cases, greater than the deepest points of the Great Recession. One of the interesting things about Shelton and Mason County is when these things happen, we're quick to feel the pain, but the recovery takes a long time. While we are making progress toward recovery, our community is still struggling. Countless small businesses are still facing significant impacts. Despite the federal relief, we're very thankful for that, and the state investments to keep the ball rolling, and the significant work by a lot of folks. Economic recovery, for sure, is going to be a long haul. So, as we commence the next legislative session, I want to share with you 4 priorities from the Economic Development Council's perspective. The first, infrastructure. Over the course of 2021, we did have some good news. We had 15 proposals of investment in Mason County that came through the EDC and 3 local expansion projects. Of those 15 recruitments, 11 of them were initially interested in Mason County, wanting to locate here. People are wanting to move here. Businesses are wanting to locate here now. 11 were initially interested in Mason County sites, but we were unable to meet their infrastructure needs, and that resulted in our research of this potential of about 850 jobs and about $640 million in capital investment. We continue to develop our sites to a readiness level, but significant infrastructure is definitely needed. Our Community Economic and Development Strategy project list, you guys are familiar with that, has been instrumental in helping us distribute ARPA funding and focus those efforts in identified areas. Second thing is extending the 0.09% sales and use tax for public facilities and economic development activities in our rural communities. Rural counties in Washington State have benefited from the 0.09% rebate of locally generated sales and use tax for over 20 years. We know that there's a 25-year ceiling on that. This tool helps us significantly create with critical infrastructure and attract new industry, diversify economies, and also create and retain jobs. Second thing is continue to support Department of Commerce's request for $7.5 million in the Community Economic Revitalization Board to build infrastructure to foster job growth in our urban and rural communities, and the $2.5 million for grants for shovel-ready manufacturing sites. Fourth and last, support and protect state-level leadership and funding for economic development, including full support for business recruitment, retention, and expansion programs. The collective results from these entities are outstanding. Over the last 5 years, local area development organizations, the Economic Development Council's partners, have helped over 717 businesses expand or develop new facilities and assisted 226 startups. These companies have ultimately invested over $2 billion in land, buildings, and equipment. These growing businesses have created over 13,078 new jobs. Our EDC business clients are estimated to generate over $100 million in new tax revenues for Washington State and local communities annually. Every state dollar leverages a match of at least $6 from other public and private sources. In the new 2021-2022 state ADO contracts, there are new performance metrics focused on equity and inclusion. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, ADOs worked in a partnership with Department of Commerce to manage 4 rounds of major funding for small business grants, totaling over $284 million, and much more, including local and regional funding. In the last Commerce grant round, over 26,500 applications were received and 1,442 grants were awarded. Department of Commerce has awarded over 13,000 grants to small businesses through COVID-19. The economic development ecosystem has also executed multiple other grant rounds and conducted extensive outreach to countless small businesses, nonprofit employers, and underserved communities about resources such as the federal SBA Paycheck Protection Program and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And to close, I just want to thank you again for your continued support in the legislature and being part of our community and being shoulder to shoulder with us as we continue to try to press on and keep business moving. I wish you guys all the best in this session. Hopefully much better than last. And with that, I'll move on. Representative MacEwen.
I got you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the work of the EDC. So we're on the priorities for the coming session. Is that correct, Heidi? That's what we're doing. So the long-term care tax is a big part. I hope that we can, at a minimum, suspend it. I would like to go further than that, but that's not the political reality in Olympia right now. But I think we will at least get it suspended and be able to work on a more comprehensive reform for it next year in a long session. Short session just doesn't avail itself to major and complex things unless you're going to just fully scrap something, and that's not the agenda that's coming forward on that. I'll continue to be pushing on the budget that we've got to increase our rainy day fund because it's raining and the economy is in a tenuous spot. We're going to continue to see major shifts in how our economy functions through this. And these changes that happen are often become permanent. They seem, quote the Fed, they seem transitory at the time, but they're not. We're going to continue to see more automation as companies aren't able to get people to work. They're going to figure out a different way to manufacture or to serve. That's going to have an impact on the economy, and we've got to be able to adapt. And oftentimes in state government, we're too slow to do it. And we've got to be more proactive. So my role on the Appropriations Committee, I'm going to continue to fight for a larger increase in our rainy day fund and to have more in reserve so that when we have these storms, we can weather them more appropriately. And that is key to keeping the state on solid economic footing. Dan alluded to it before, we've rolled out a major transportation overhaul. You can't expect to maintain or even improve your transportation infrastructure on a business model that's going out of date. We as the state and as a nation have continued to push for lower carbon emissions via electric vehicles, via higher mileage standards, but yet rely on a tax that's based on gas consumption to fund transportation. Well, when you're pushing one thing down but using that same revenue source to pay for everything, it's not going to work. So I proposed this over the last couple of years. We now have it in a major package, and that is to take the sales tax generated from automobile sales and put it into the transportation. Makes sense, it's a nexus. It's not going to increase what you're paying out of your pocket, but there's a direct nexus to the transportation and how we fund it. Is that a hit to the operating budget? Yes, it is. But had we done it a long time ago, we wouldn't be feeling it today. We can afford it. It's a matter of priorities. The priorities aren't asking you for more money. The priorities are government spending it the right way. And that's what we need to do when it comes to our transportation infrastructure. And I believe we can do it. I think we have a shot to have momentum on this proposal and to finally have a steady revenue source for transportation that doesn't increase what you're paying out of pocket. That's one of my major proposals. We'll see how we do with that. Our ranking member in transportation, Representative Marcus, is very energetic about it, and I look forward to having that debate. Again, with it being a 60-day session, we generally don't see major policy overhauls, but I hope we can look at some of the law enforcement reforms and how too far they went. Dan's been an excellent advocate for us on that. Because at the end of the day, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. I think everybody has the same viewpoint, generally speaking, and that is, you want a good job or be able to run your business, you want your kids to have a good education, when you call 911, they show up. And what this legislature and the governor have done in the last year is the exact opposite of those three things. And so we've got to make those corrections. And I believe that we've got a lot of good proposals out there to do it. Dan can certainly speak to the law enforcement side more. I think we can address transportation. I think we can also put ourselves in a better economic situation with our overall budget. With that, I will flip it. Who's going next? I'll give it to my seatmate, Representative Griffey. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's nice to serve with this team. So we get to specialize in different areas. My service as a firefighter made it a natural fit that I would serve on the Public Safety Committee. So yes, I very aggressively serve and aggressively share my opinions on public safety. So as I talked about before in my opening statements, we are going to have significant law enforcement reform to roll back all of the bills that I think has crippled our law enforcement in Washington State, and expect to see that happen pretty quickly in the legislative session. We are also, House Republicans also put the Speaker on notice that we want to eliminate the governor's current Emergency Powers Act. The legislature must, all the other things, constitutionally obligated. We are the ones that write law. The legislature does. And we are the direct representatives of all of you in this room, and we should be the one writing the law. Now, does it completely scrap his ability to call emergency? No, but he can't have a continuing emergency for 2 years. So expect us to be very loud, very boisterous, and point out every time when they deny that bill a hearing. We will call for a special motion in committee. We will call for special motion daily if necessary on the House floor, but that has to be fixed. Your locally elected representatives must write laws. The governor has no business doing it. And our democracy does not work well when that happens. The other thing that I'm working on, I'll go to my bills now, this transportation infrastructure network that we have, our global supply chain. Washington State, we have a real problem. DOT arbitrarily closed a lot of our rest areas, and our truckers need those rest areas because they have a federally mandated rest cycle that they have to have. And so they're parking just alongside the road, and when they park alongside the road, now they're getting complaints from local neighborhoods that these trucks are parked on our streets. Our truckers, the people that actually bring our goods, our toilet paper, the toilet paper we ran out of last year, right? Those people are just people. We can no longer treat people so terribly. We've got to treat people well. So I have 2 bills directly. One that says all of our rest areas are critical infrastructures in Washington State shall be maintained open even in the worst situations, financial situations the state has. The other thing I have is a bill that would give tax incentives to businesses and even port districts. We amended the bill to develop safe overnight parking for our trucking industry. The trucking partners have to have that. Our economic vitality and recovery has to have it. These are things that must pass next year, and I'll be very, very boisterous about that. I also want to make sure that people, janitors, those sort of things, cannot show pornography to children. It is a grooming technique where an adult will show pornography to a young child. It sets them up for to be sexually violated into the future. And I think just showing it to them is a sexual violation. I couldn't even get a hearing last year because the majority party said they were really worried about the rap music industry's concern with that bill. Well, I say, heck with that. BS. It is really time for us to say we are going to take care of our children. I don't care what the rap music industry says. We need to stop sexual violence before it happens. Those that are sexually violated at a young age turn into sexual predators themselves. And I'm tired of it. So I will be very loud again on this. And I guess I've gone too long, but it is time that we just all put our feet in the ground. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, the right is right now. We're not going to protect the rap music industry in Washington State. We're going to protect sexual assault survivors. I thank you so much.
Well, you can see why I love working with these guys. There's no lack of passion. No lack of passion with both of them. They're just tremendous. And Dan has passed some bills that really make a difference in our state for his issue, and I really appreciate that. We've had our issues. I forgot one thing, and I got to mention this. My son-in-law, Danny Berner, couldn't be here today, and I think he's on your board of directors. And I want to apologize. He was under the weather this morning. Gave me a call, so I want to apologize for him. He has opened his law office in the Angle building. He sits where Ben Settle used to sit in the office up there. If you call 426-2999, that's Rick Haas's old number, you'll get Danny and Danielle. So big plug for son-in-law, and he's doing great here. He loves being in Shelton. He went to school here, and you know, clients call and he says, yeah, I know where Tahuya is. And, yeah. So, anyway, that's great. I see PUD3 here, and that PUD1 and PUD3 have done such a tremendous job for us in the last couple of years. We have had closures, flooding, Highway 101 from Hoodsport up to all the way to almost, well, I don't know, it's 50 miles of highway.
50 miles, yes.
And you're bringing in crews from all over to help, and people have been out of power for days and days, and still are, some of them. So thank you very much to all the people. Pass that on, all the people that you work, that you employ, the linemen, the office people, everybody is just doing a fantastic job. Joe, thanks for your work with the EDC, and thank you for the city council people that are here. We know Mason County is unique, but there's only 5 counties in the state of Washington that have only 1 incorporated city. That's, you know, only 5 of those counties. I won't ask you to name them, but they're Mason, Jefferson, San Juan, Ferry, and Waukegan. So our neighboring counties, Grays Harbor and Lewis, you think of them as very rural, but they each have 9 incorporated cities. So they have city councils, they have, you know, they're going to their legislature, they've got sidewalks, sewers, all the things that we are still building, but we are still, like I said, the most rural county in the state, and that's a lot of advantages right now when people are starting to want to live and work from home. As I mentioned, the advancement of our fiber network and the opportunities to live in a rural setting are really great here. The next session, I got a couple things I'd like to finish. Colleen is here with the Shelton Veterans Village. We've got to break ground on that. I think we're close, and they're working hard on it, working through some details. When I got the appropriation for $6 million, they were for 2 veterans villages. The one in Retzel is already finished, and we're going to break ground and get that done. So that's a priority for me. The other priority, I've worked on this since first money I got appropriated for the Shelton, or for the Belfair Bypass. Now we call it Highway 3 Freight Corridor, but anyway, was in 2005.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got to break ground on the Belfair Bypass, and we're not going to accept phasing the project. Phasing means shortening it, and that's what they did with the improvements through Belfair. Should have continued from Sweetwater Creek all the way to 106, and that we should get finished as well. And so we're going to hold them to it. Even if I'm not here, you are going to hold them to that. And one suggestion I would make as a speaker for you is a fellow named Steve Rourke. Steve is a good friend. He's worked for the Department of Transportation for a long time, and he's your new Olympic Region Administrator. Okay, he took over from John Wylands on just a couple days ago, on January 1st. And Steve has been a really good person to work with for legislators. He knows us, he knows the community. As I've said, he's been with the department for over 30 years. And hopefully he can help us and keep reminding. He knows all about those 2 projects too as well. So keep reminding him about that. So those are kind of things I'm really interested in this year. I have a small bill with that allows the larger fire districts. It's a permissive thing. they can use their own treasurer instead of going to the city or the county for bonding. And hopefully that'll get bipartisan approval. And then the last bill I have, I introduced at the end of last session, but it's about legal financial obligations. So if you get in difficulty with the courts and you have these obligations to complete, and perhaps you're going through rehabilitation, you've got a drug problem, and you're coming out of that, still you have these hurdles to meet. And it often, I've talked to people about this, they can then fall off the wagon. It can be too hard to even get a place to live when you're in recovery. And the counties, Superior Courts don't really recover this money. It's very hard to recover. So what the bill does is it gives the judge discretion in these issues. They're not mandatory, but the judge, let's leave it up to the judge, the judicial system, to see if these legal financial obligations can be foregone for some people that are really moving forward and back into our community. So hopefully we can get that one through. So it's going to, as I say, it's going to be a short session. People who are up for re-election, that makes it even shorter because they want to get out of there and get back and start a campaign. But I just have to say it's been just great to see you again and be with people and interact. As Drew said last session, we were isolated. And what the majority party said, and say that, oh look, we had 1,000 people signed up to testify on this bill. Some of them would be over 1,000 people. Look how many people participated. They signed up. Well, the chairman still has that list, and he or she still picks who they want to testify. And if that chair is hearing the bill, they're probably in favor of the bill, and they probably can see very easily who they'd like to have as testifiers for that bill. So it's kind of a phony thing, and I think the people see through it. It looks like, at least in the Senate, I think we'll start to open up in a couple of weeks. We'll still be on the floor on Monday. I'm going to go down there and actually hold rank on some, and I'm going to actually be on the floor on Monday. There'll be 15 members of the 49-member Senate on the floor. That's all. But, you know, the funny thing, the House and the Senate control their own chambers. The governor does not. But still, the public place, the public underneath the dome, is still controlled by enterprise services, we call it. But that's open today, and that'll be open for the session, I believe. So you could go down and meet people down in the dome and talk. At least that's an improvement, and we're moving back towards real participation. These guys know, I know, I'm serving with people I've never met. Never met them in person. And how can you make a deal, how can you make a relationship with somebody you can't talk to and look in the eye and say, hey, Fred, we're both serving, we're both got a bill, you know, you're in the House, I'm in the Senate, let's work together on it, maybe your bill happens. You can't do that when you can't look at somebody and talk to them. So anyway, that's a sad part, but I think we're moving forward, and I'm optimistic. You know, and I guess I'll close with this. You're always optimistic going into the session. You're always disappointed when you leave, but you're always optimistic when you come. So thank you very much.
Last but certainly not least, it's my pleasure to welcome City Manager Jeff Knighton to present the 2022 priority projects on behalf of the City of Shelton.
Thank you very much, Heidi, and representatives and Senator. I appreciate you being here, and I will slightly disagree with just one good thing happening last session. The other good thing, which I think was incredibly important for us, was the tremendous work over several years that this delegation did to help with the latecomers agreement with Washington State. That, I think, is going to be foundational for our community's success going forward for decades. Definitely an infrastructure project that will help us within the economic development realm. One thing I did want to mention as well, a couple things I want to mention, but one thing to highlight is the transportation benefit districts that are our funding source for our roads, and the cap that is currently exists on those of a 10-year cap. It can be revoted, which you have to associate debt with it, never a good idea. So I want to stay away from that, but if the legislature would look at the 10-year cap and see how that might work better for us in the future, that would be terrific. And then projects, we have one each for economic development, for public safety, and for community life, really, which is one of our council's strategic goals. The community life piece is the deck at the Shelton Library, and that deck has been closed for several years. It's still standing, but people aren't allowed out onto that. It's a great community attribute, and the city has invested dollars to make the library more of a community center piece right there at a major intersection in town. So we'd appreciate consideration for that. Safety and security for our parking improvements for the Shelton Police Force. There has been, and our court personnel and our emergency dispatchers and everybody else, we have an opportunity to create a secure parking lot so that our officers, when they exit the building to respond to a call, to show up when 911 is called, as was mentioned earlier, they feel free to head out of the building and don't have to worry about people anywhere surrounding them, making them feel less safe than they ought to be. And then lastly, moving forward with the satellite treatment plant, the water reclamation plant on the northern end of our UGA to expand the capacity in that area. The city will also be investing in a piece of property to make that a reality, so that eventually, many years from now, we will no longer be discharging to Oakland Bay, which will help our shellfish harvester community and our tribal partners and people that rely on the water for their economic livelihood. That's what I have for you this morning. I'm going to keep it relatively short, so I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that presentation. I've always supported the city's efforts, and I think the partnership that the three of us and the city have had in the 8 years that I've served has been fruitful. We've been able to accomplish a lot of good things. Maybe not enough if you're a city administrator, but we've done everything we could to make sure that the city is shown in good favor, and that latecomer agreement's taken a lot of work, and I'm glad we got rid of it. I believe Mason County is so beautiful and has so many assets that if we build it, they will come. Economic development is just maybe a little tweak away from major employers moving here, major manufacturers moving here. We have a wonderful fire district that I've been very grateful to work for my entire life, almost 36 years total now with my volunteer time. And you know, when you look at it, that having a fire department that is able to respond to large emergencies is another piece that we have to have if we're talking about manufacturing and that sort of thing. So I'm very grateful to have that experience and that asset for us. There's a lot of work that has to be done. Our cities are dealing with epidemic homelessness, housing, and mental health and substance abuse. I serve on a brand new panel that is looking at new ways, our new group, looking at new ways to how do we do community treatment, how do we work on getting people housed. A lot of people don't understand this, but we spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Washington State budget on housing annually and build nearly no housing. I mean, these kind of things need to stop. They should not exist in the same sentence. If we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, we should be building houses. We actually pay people for that. So I think the best way we can help our cities is to help them through that. And I think the way we're going to do that is help them with community treatment. We're going to try to come up with some monies to have treatment facilities, treatment centers, changing protocols for emergency providers. Maybe don't have to take people right to the emergency room. They can take them right to substance abuse treatment facilities. So there's so much that could be done to help people, to help the cities move forward. I'm involved in most of it right now, so thank you for what you do. We need all of our city partners, and I will continue to work hard to make sure that you can do the things that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you again to the city. I mentioned we have the only city in the county, and we've worked very hard over the years for especially infrastructure projects. I think when you're, Patty knows this, when you're a forest products community, maybe the first thing that isn't built certainly is the sewer, the big water system, those kinds of things, and we've had to work hard over the years. Back in the late 80s, we formed a partnership. Can't remember the exact parts of the long name, but it was a joint project with the city, the county, the port. EDC, of course, was involved. And we made a lot of improvements, and it took a lot of time. The State Patrol was involved, the Correction Center was involved, and now we have a sewer that starting to extend throughout the UGA, which makes a huge difference. Now that the citizens, you're disrupted, your street's disrupted because of the water and that thing, but those types of improvements are the only thing that matter to the companies that want to come to your community. They matter certainly from environmental reasons, but we've made some great improvements. I remember this was back in the mid-80s when I was the EDC director, and we needed natural gas line to go to the Port of Shelton. And kind of noticed this, but the Correction Center was the biggest polluter on the Olympic Peninsula. They were? Yeah, because they burned coal. That was the heating system for the Washington Correction Center in those days. And they brought in from the low, this was run by the state, so they brought in the cheapest coal they could get, which was out of Utah, and it was extremely polluting. So the Olympic National Park, that was the biggest polluter for the park as well. So we went to the Correction Center and said, we got to change this. I mean, this is embarrassing. This is the state of Washington. You are the biggest polluter in the Olympic Peninsula. So the gas line was extended through the port property, all the way up, Airport Dayton Road in those days now, different, to the Correction Center. And they also put in a wood system, wood pellets. So they burned wood pellets at that time and natural gas. And who built the wood pellet plant? That was MacEwen in Tacoma. They got more jobs, moved wood pellets out here, and now you have a wood pellet plant right here out by the port on Johns Prairie Road. So infrastructure matters. It takes a long time, a lot of patience, and I really salute the city for all you've done in moving us along. And we've had some big projects, and we've had some small projects, with things that we've done with Turning Point and others that we wanted to continue to do. So we are a great community. We ought to be really proud of ourselves. So thank you very much.
We'll be quick so we can get to the Q&A. And Jeff, thanks for bringing up the latecomers agreement. I totally, you get up here and you got all these people in your mind. So that was a huge, shout out to Troy Nichols, who was a huge help on getting that through. The governor vetoed it the previous session, and you never give up. I think there's probably a legitimate concern that his administration had with the original bill, and we worked with them to get it done. So yeah, good things can happen when you do talk and you advocate for things, and we got that done. So that'll be tremendous for the city going forward. So I've always been a big advocate for the infrastructure projects. You maybe don't see the benefit right away, but they are key to economic development. And so we've retired a large amount of sewer debt on the north end. We've helped the city with its sewer projects here, and we'll continue to look at that. I'll put this shout out to those of you that maybe are superintendent of a local rural school district or run a nonprofit. Being a supplemental year in the capital budget, we can't do these major projects. I mean, you're looking at $20,000, $30,000 things, which aren't a lot in the big scheme of things, but they are a huge part for smaller organizations. And so if you have some of those projects, get with us seriously like the next week or two. We'll get you the forms to fill those out, because I think this is the supplemental year is the time when we can do a lot of those things that have a big impact on a local organization, but aren't really a huge lift in the legislative process. So that'd be my request back to you guys that are involved with those various organizations. And with that, we go to Q&A, right, Eddie? All right, thank you.
My new mode of transportation. Since we have already gone over time, I'm going to go ahead and skip the question and answer session. We do have really great access to our 35th district representatives. If you haven't tried to reach out to them in the past, that's probably the only reason you haven't heard back from them. They have always been accessible via email, telephone, etc. So I'm sure they'll stick around for a little bit if you do have questions. If not, we will post how you can reach them on masonchamber.com so that you can follow up or give us a shout and we'll help you with that. So just a couple of things as we wrap up today. First off, my thanks to Shelton Yacht Club for hosting today's event. Beautiful venue. Great ambiance too. Of course, being in person again, we have catering, so Wald and Woodsy, we appreciate you guys for feeding us this morning. Of course, my thanks and appreciation for our partners from today, North Mason Chamber, the EDC, the city, and of course the Shelton-Mason County Chamber. So I'll hand it over to you.
So it's been a wonderful morning. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the value of our partnership that we have with both our chambers in Mason County, and to all of our legislators that were here this morning. You always make the time for us, and we really appreciate it. So we wish you a great day and a great week. Keep your rubber boots handy, and we will see you at maybe the end of the session. All right, thank you.